Welcome, everybody, first of all, and I'm excited to be able to be here and share a little bit of my thoughts around this particular topic this morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever your time zone is. In my world, the technology geeks are those people who really work in an IT or software development environment, or people who keep servers up and running, manage corporate networks, really those sorts of technology roles. As technology becomes more and more prevalent across all of our businesses, we're seeing more and more employees who are technologically savvy. But when I think about somebody that I would classify as a geek, they really are those people who their whole job is focused around technology, whether it is coding and building software or whether it is keeping network infrastructures up and running.
That's great, Cynthia. And I would imagine that at Microsoft, that is obviously a huge percentage of your population. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so what is the mindset of a geek? We'll get into this in much more depth and much more detail as we move forward. But, coming from your expertise in working with not only Microsoft but other tech companies and engineering firms, what's that mindset? How does that work in that IT and dev world?
So in my experience, what I have noticed about the technology professional is that they can often be rather impatient with people around them who don't seem to have the answers or know how to do things. They can be impatient with their own learning. They feel like they should know it all, and they want to make sure that they stay on top of whatever new technologies or new processes are out there or in that tech arena. That is their whole focus. As business has become much more robust, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later, there is a need for them to think more broadly than just that technology, but they really are enticed by whatever they see as the cool new features and functions of technology that is out on the market. That's what's going to grab their attention, and they tend to not see as much value in things that are not directly related to technology.
Interesting. And that leads in perfectly to the next slide and the next set of items that we want to discuss, which is, in that tech world, where your workforce is really looking for things that coalesce with what they do. What is that high-tech environment like? What's the starting point, the foundation that you're actually training in this high-tech world?
Sure. One of the things that I've noticed is that in some ways, working in a high-tech environment is very similar to working in any corporate environment, and maybe even some non-corporate environments. In today's society, nobody seems to have enough time for anything. And if I think specifically about the learning space, people just would love to learn by osmosis and not have to spend any time learning new skills or new capabilities just because they don't have time. They don't have enough time to get everything done in the day that they want to get done. And so that becomes a challenge in a learning space as well. They want to learn things as fast as they possibly can because they need to get back to doing their job and checking things off of whatever their to-do list is. Another challenge that we run into that is maybe a little bit unique to technology, although again I think does have impacts more broadly, is just the speed of how fast things are changing around us. In the technology world, it seems like whatever today's technology is obsolete by next week. And so you never learn everything that you need to know. What you need to know for today may not be sufficient for tomorrow or next week. And so the very speed of change across the industry itself makes the technology field even more of a challenge to stay on top of all of those changes and the new technologies that are coming out. And then the last thing is, in the technology world, we've got to really work with our employees to make sure that they understand that it's not always about what the latest cool thing is, but rather we're trying to enable business and a business process. And so what is it that we can do to make sure that we are thinking about what is best for the business, which may not always be the latest thing in technology the day it comes out. But it's about really understanding the overall business process and how we can use technology to enable that and not drive from a pure technology perspective.
That's really interesting, Cynthia. And certainly I think you touched on numbers 1 and number 3, which I do think is very relevant to other organizations, other industries, as well as the speed aspect. But I've got to think that that speed element and the rate of change and how fast things progress in an industry driven by tech that's ramped up even more, and that's got to be a huge issue and a huge challenge as you think about best maximizing those people.
Right. And when it comes to learning, especially because the pace of the industry itself is moving so fast, technology workers expect their learning to move just as fast. They expect anything that impacts their world to move at the same speed as everything else. And so we're constantly challenged by keeping learning relevant, making learning fast, all of the things that they have come to expect in everything else of their work life.
Right. There's the concept of the employees wanting the kind of work that they do and that they produce. They want to see that same level of quality, speed, all of that in what you're providing to them. So that's really interesting, and certainly I think something that is unique in that high-tech environment. That leads us to the next point. So we discussed sort of what's innate to the environment of the tech world, and certainly that will impact the worker themselves and impact the employee and the leaders there. But you mentioned, and you touched on a little bit of the concept of what drives these employees, but I'd love to hear in even more depth, what is that high-tech worker? Who is the geek, if you will, and what's really unique about these kinds of folks in your experience and in training them over the course of seeing technology shift and change so rapidly over 30 years in the industry?
Sure. One of the things when I first started working in learning and development for technology workers that I learned very quickly was how fast they want to consume information. I had a former mentor tell me one time that when you're training somebody from a technology field, they want to be able to walk in the room, they want to lift the top of their head, they want you to pour the information in as fast as you possibly can so that they can close their head and walk out of the room and already have absorbed everything that they need to know. They don't want to take time to do role plays. They don't want to take time to sit and listen to a lot of lecture. They want to consume new information as fast as they can. And it's just, that is their mode already. They're used to working fast and they want to learn just as fast and they want it to be quick. In more recent, and by recent I would say the last 5 years, what I have found is, again, another factor that I've noticed is people want to be able to self-service the information that they need to know. They want to be able to go out and look. And with the expansion of data and information available on the internet, with intercompany intranets that are available with more information, people want to simply be able to go out and get the answer to the question that they have and then continue on with their work. And so that ability for information to be easily accessible, that self-service mentality has become even more prevalent. as more and more information truly is available for self-service. So I think that that desire was always there. We just didn't always have access to as much information as we have available to us today. So that has become much more of an issue and an interest for the technology worker in the last few years, where they want to just, tell me where I can find the information when I need it, rather than trying to make sure that I know everything all at once.
And that's really interesting. And interestingly enough, as you're talking about training the technology worker, some of the results of technology improvements over the years have allowed that sort of on-demand learning and being able to find out that information. They've really enabled that. So that's kind of an interesting byproduct of the kind of training that you're doing.
Right.
And this all seems unique to the learning, but again, this is, I think, something where we've heard this from other clients, and we see this in a lot of industries and a lot of research that there is a real push to go in this kind of way. And so that leads me into the next question that I have for you, which is, what does this really mean for training? This is certainly a shift in what the traditional training environment would have been, which was that classroom learning, that instructor-led technology. Now, this would really create a different way of needing to train. So tell us about that.
Sure. What we have learned is that we have to, first of all, for general content, make it into smaller chunks. People much prefer that 30-minute or 4 to 45-minute on-demand online training course that they can consume when they need it at a time that works for them. And especially working in a global industry, trying to have instructor-led classes at a specific date and time, you bring in all kinds of time zone challenges and what'll work for people. So that really, that on-demand, that short, focused nugget of information is what our people really want to consume more. They like those shorter pieces and bursts of learning rather than trying to find a time that they can physically go to a classroom. The other things that we have learned is that trying to work with just out-of-the-box training or off-the-shelf training, as it's sometimes referred to, doesn't tend to work in our environment. Because they want it quickly, they also want it to be very applicable to them. So learning simply how to map general business processes or how to put together a generic project plan is not what my people are looking for. They truly want to know, what does that plan need to look like? What's the template that we use in our business? And exactly what server should I store it on? What are the terminologies and concepts that I need to make sure that I've included? Whatever that might be that's unique to the industry, they don't want generic training. They want to know, what is it in my business? Exactly what does that need to look like? And along those same lines, when it comes to putting that learning into practice, they would prefer to do it on the job themselves. If they can't do that, if it needs to be something that we practice first in a classroom type environment or a lab environment, it still needs to be real work. They don't want to do role plays. They don't want to do scenarios that are not really specific to the kind of work that they do. They want it to be something that when they've left the class, they've spent time working on things that they're going to have to do anyway. So they leave with some of the real work already done, and then they can go back to the job and finish it up in whatever manner they need to. But they need to feel that they're putting it really into practice in a way that helps them get their work done that's on their list of to-dos for the day.
And in that kind of fast-paced environment, that makes a lot of sense in terms of really wanting to ensure that any time that is spent training is built towards an ROI and built towards a business objective and built towards something that will actually help them improve their work and get something done. So as we move on to on the next question. That sort of training all seems very reasonable and logical for maybe some more technical kinds of training, as you were speaking about some of the different processes that people may need to go through. The kind of server information, all of those sorts of things that are very technically driven. But what about the more higher level training that is really about people and really about improvement of relationships and the actual interpersonal element of business that even in a tech environment I imagine is incredibly important. So if you could tell us about what this looks like when you're talking about the people side of things.
Sure. One of the interesting shifts that I've seen as we work with training for technology employees is that there is more and more of this emphasis on working together. Historically, people in a technology role would come into the work and they might be able to do their entire job in their office with the door shut and never really need to communicate with another person face to face throughout the day. That has changed. It has gotten to the point, due to complexity of products, due to the need for different products to interrelate and interconnect from a technology perspective. Almost all work anymore is done as a team. It's done working with other people. And that isn't always a skill set that IT and technology workers have built. They've worked really hard to build their skills on very specific things like how to code in C# or SQL, how to manage servers and run Windows Server on different boxes and machines, how to keep corporate networks up and running and secure. And so they've spent their time learning things that we might classify as more of a science, which has very definite, this is what you should do and this is how you do it. So it's very prescriptive and it's a little bit easier. You just learn the rules and you always repeat them and you're fine. Now, industry has changed to the point that it's much more important that we work in teams, that we're able to collaborate, that we have some of those people and interpersonal skills that we maybe didn't need historically to do technology jobs. And that has been an ongoing challenge in the business world, in the technology environment, to now build those skills, because they're not a hard science. They're definitely an art. And so there's not a prescriptive do this, do this, do this in that environment. You really need to be able to interpret what you're seeing around you, listen to what people are saying, and use those interpersonal skills because they've got to be able to work effectively with other people.
Well, and that leads absolutely perfectly into the next slide, which is tech geeks really aren't typically thought of in being highly skilled in that interpersonal arena, but there is certainly the capacity and the ability to grow people in these areas. And with the nature of work, I'm imagining, as your quote says, in today's workplace, interpersonal skills like communication and collaboration are more important than the tech skills. So, that almost even in this realm seems still somewhat counterintuitive, as you're competing against Apple and Amazon and all of these incredibly skilled companies for the right kind of talent. So how do you bring that out? How do you at Microsoft and in the tech world as a whole think about what that means for interpersonal skills and getting your geeks, if you will, to embrace that and build those capacities?
Yeah, it's been a challenge because for a long time, those interpersonal skills were not valued. What I have seen as a transition over the last 3 to 5 years is the people who really succeed in the role, who get the promotions, who get those opportunities to work on those cool new projects, are the people who have demonstrated that they have built those interpersonal skills, that they're able to communicate effectively and collaborate with others. There are a lot of people with technical skills. You need both. You need the technical skills. That's your ticket in the door. But if you don't have the interpersonal skills and that ability to build those and grow those, that's going to hold you back from succeeding in the technology world today. So it's not enough to only have the tech skills. They're still critical, but you need more than that. For our environment, this is exactly where we have leveraged emergenetics. We used to do team building activities like the whole team would go golf for an afternoon together, or go out into the woods and do some type of a ropes course together. And most technology people found those to be a waste of time. They felt like they were a little bit too much focused on having fun, spending time with people, and not enough focused on how that really helps them do their job. And in bringing in a language from emergenetics helps people understand not only getting to know my coworkers better as an individual, but how we can work together better to get the work done that we need to get done. And so providing a framework for them to think about, how can I communicate better with you by understanding what your thinking styles are and what's important to you, and how can you then communicate better with me because you understand me better. That has been critical, both in helping the technology people build those skills around communication and collaboration, but also in helping them have a framework of how to do that, because they are looking for some help, a way to help them improve their communication and collaboration and how they work with other people.
That's awesome, Cynthia, and we're certainly happy that has been a result with emergenetics. And I love what you said in terms of looking for the kinds of tools that really provide that way of performance improvement. And I also loved what you said in terms of some of the motivating factors. It's not just about money, or it's not about position, but even the chance to work on some really interesting, cool projects. So, thinking about it from the perspective of really honing in on what drives people, what motivates people, and understanding people at that innate level, and realizing that there are going to be things that drive tech geeks that may not drive others, and tying that back into the communication and collaboration element that's a really neat marriage. Well, I want to just finish up. I think we have a couple of minutes, but I would love to hear, Cynthia, your thoughts on what the future is for high tech, and maybe some trends that you see for talent development a bit more broadly.
So the main trends that I see in the high tech industry, I do not think are unique to high tech. I think that to some extent, we address them across all industry. They might be more highly critical in high tech or less. It'll vary, but the whole time factor, people have less and less time available, is constantly going to be a challenge for how do we get quality learning to employees that can help them improve their careers and their job skills, but yet do it in a way that minimizes the amount of time it takes to get the maximum amount of benefit. The whole anytime, anywhere access. People want access to information when they have the question. They need the answer now. And so how can we make it easier for people to find what it is that they need quickly and in small nuggets? So what's the answer to this specific question? Don't make me learn 2 hours of generic overview content before I get the answer to my question. I want to delve immediately to, here's my problem, here's my question, what's the answer? So getting it down to those really focused nuggets of content, and more emphasis on the importance of teaming and collaboration. We do less work all of the time where I can go off and work just by myself. And if I think back to when I started working, after college many years ago, most of the jobs that I had, I went into the office in the morning, I worked my work, and I went home at the end of the day. And I might have had questions of a couple of people during the day, but for the most part, I could just do my job and I didn't need to interact with a lot of other people. Today, I spend at least 90% of my day at work working with other people in order to get my job done. And so just the nature of how we work has required that I have to make sure that I have those skills to team and collaborate effectively with other people. If I was going to say more broadly, even beyond high tech, I think we're going to see obviously more and more emphasis on social tools and ways of connecting with people, both to get answers to questions as well as just reaching out to other people. And in general, across the industry, people want to find learning entertaining. They do not want it to be boring. And I think that just comes of our culture of being raised on televisions, and that we have sort of that expectation of quality. And so I think those are a couple things that are, again, not unique to high tech, but something that we all have to think about is how are we delivering, how are we leveraging social media, how are we making sure that whatever information we are providing is grabbing the attention of people as they are trying to learn from that information.
Well, that's great synopsis of some of the key trends, Cynthia, and I think that you've hit them on the head in what we've also seen and heard a lot from the industry and from other clients, other organizations. And it is all about people. It is all about how you're going to be able to facilitate the kinds of working relationships and collaboration that can set your organization apart, and then that goes to people and culture and communication. So really, really interesting discussion and talk around what the tech environment is like and what that means for training and what that means for people development. So thank you so much, Cynthia. It was really a pleasure to hear from you.
You're welcome.